The world of Hogwarts Legacy is visually impressive. Truly, it's wonderful to move around the castle. Hogwarts, Hogsmeade, and some of the surrounding areas are beautiful to look at. For our rewrite, however, the map is too large and scattered. A massive open world with repeated encounters, distant hamlets, camps, caves, etc. don't contribute to the fantasy. Students are pulled away from the school as opposed to deepening their life within its walls. Our map consists of Hogwarts, the immediate surrounding grounds, Hogsmeade, and the Forbidden Forest. Additionally, there are sections from the wider Wizarding World. Diagon Alley, Feldcroft, St. Mungo's, and other locations still appear, but they are not permanent locations in the open world. The world of Hogwarts Legacy is much larger than the story needs it to be. Leaving Hogwarts, or even Hogsmeade, leads to the broad, open world filled with camps, caves, Merlin trials, and scattered hamlets. Some of these may be enjoyable in isolation if they only happened a few times, but they happen quite a bit more than a few times. Instead of being a student, the player acts like an adventurer in a standard open-world action RPG. There are no classes, no relationships, no school secrets, because we instead fly across the Scottish Highlands, clear enemy camps, fight random wolves, etc. If the story, systems, and exploration were designed around the scale of a large world, then this might work. But Hogwarts Legacy is certainly not that. The size of the world may be impressive, but when nothing interesting is inside, the design feels purposeless. More space doesn't mean anything if it just exists to take up time. Making Hogwarts, Hogsmeade, and the Forbidden Forest deeper, more reactive, and more connected to the story should be our goal. Hogwarts is the most visually impressive part of the game, but for our rewrite, it needs to be so much more. It must be the center of the player's life, progression, and the story. In the game, Hogwarts is beautiful, detailed, and genuinely impressive to walk through. But it ends up becoming a pit stop later on in the game as opposed to the anchor for the rest of the world. Classes, character quests, secret passages, house events, clubs, tutoring, detention, and more all take place at Hogwarts. The player, and all other students, live at the school, and so the vast majority of the game should take place at Hogwarts. An expansion that feels obvious would be secret passages throughout the castle. Hidden passages might help the player reach a class on time, avoid prefix after curfew, discover secrets, etc. Restricted or hidden areas are also another important part of the expansion. Places like the restricted section, faculty tower, rooms related to ancient magic, etc. are locations that can make exploration feel progressive. Players will gradually understand that the castle they knew in their first few years was only the surface of what Hogwarts has to offer. The castle should also change over the school year. It changes with the seasons and holidays, but should also change in more subtle ways depending on the time of the year. Around exams, we should see more students studying in the library or in common rooms. When there are developments related to the goblin-wizard tensions, there should be changes in the student population, as well as a small presence of ministry officials. Hogwarts currently feels more like a museum than a living school in many instances. If the world becomes smaller, hopefully Hogwarts becomes richer, and thus the heart of the game. The next most common playable area would be the grounds immediately surrounding Hogwarts. Places like the boathouse, owlery, Quidditch pitch, lake, and more would be in this category. These serve as the bridge between the safety of the school and the potential danger of the wider world. Students spend time here between classes, on the weekends, during holidays, and in the quieter moments of the school year. These areas can also help to support the class system. Herbology might require gathering or examining plants, beast studies might use the grounds for early lessons, and Quidditch lessons would take place like they do in the game. This can also be used for character quests. Students might want to meet near the lake after class or away from listening ears. Speaking of the lake, I think that it could support a mission or two. For example, a main story sequence may take the player underwater to investigate traces of ancient magic, hopefully making it feel more special. Since we're taking away large swaths of the open world, this should serve as our closest area to the wilder, natural world, besides Hogsmeade and the Forbidden Forest. Students should spend their free time outside, practicing their spells, hanging out by the lake, going to Quidditch matches, etc. Hogsmeade serves as the main social and commercial space outside the school. Students head to the village for supplies, to hang out on the weekends, and overall to have a brief sense of freedom from the repetition of school life. Hogsmeade already feels charming, so the goal should be to give the player more of a reason to go there, as opposed to just clearing out a full inventory. While adults would always populate the village, students should especially be there on the weekends, holidays, and other free days. Hogsmeade serves as a more casual location to hang out with others, giving some time away from the more formal structure of the school. Hogsmeade is also a great location to show the wider political tension present throughout the world, without it being dominant over the main plot. The Goblin Rebellion is not the world-ending threat that it currently is in Hogwarts Legacy, at least yet, but the tension still exists. Arguments are overheard, ministry officials and notices are posted around the village, roads become more guarded, etc. This is done to help set up the future games in the series. This game does not resolve the Goblin Rebellion, but highlights the conditions that will later lead to one. Hogsmeade also serves as a mirror for the tone of the game. During the third year, Hogsmeade serves as a warm and exciting place for young teenagers to visit. However, this will be the location where we first catch a hint of the curse on Anne, and during our fifth year, it can be a reminder of how much everything has changed. Since we're getting rid of the larger open world, where most of the combat and outdoor exploration takes place, we need to establish a new reason for combat. For this rewrite, the Forbidden Forest will serve as our main danger exploration zone. The Forbidden Forest is a place where students are warned not to go, and this is for good reason. The forest will be available with the rest of the map during the fifth year, but this doesn't mean it will be safe. Since there is no strict leveling system to keep players away, we need to rely on enemy difficulty and player preparedness. The player can choose to enter whenever they wish, but if they do not have the right spells, potions, plants, knowledge, etc., the forest should feel genuinely dangerous. We don't want the danger to simply feel like damage sponges, but instead on the player and character side. Creatures will have weaknesses the character hasn't learned yet, and players will not have developed the skills to survive direct confrontations. This should hopefully make it feel more natural than as a level-gated region, or world borders that only open at select times. Instead, we should allow players to enter and discover for themselves that they probably shouldn't have. The forest can also be used in different systems as well. A Bee Studies class might take the students into one of the shallow parts to study creatures in their natural habitat. Poppy's character quests might require the player to visit, or the player might go on their own accord for potion ingredients or plants. A reworked version of the Merlin Trials might lie deep into the forest for players brave enough to venture. However, I don't want the Forbidden Forest to feel like a large combat arena with random places to explore. The atmosphere should be our number one priority alongside the danger. Limited visibility, distant sounds, strange movements, creature tracks, and more all help to give the sense that the player does not belong there. As the player progresses, the forest may become easier to navigate, but should never feel completely safe. Retaining the sense of uncertainty helps to keep that edge of uncomfortability that is so important. Tying into the narrative and themes for a moment, I think the Forbidden Forest can serve to aid the storytelling. As the protagonist and Sebastian fall deeper into their respective obsessions, the forest can almost become a physical expression of that descent, making it significantly more unique than any other location in the game. We don't want the wider Wizarding World to disappear as we shrink the map. This means that other locations will appear, but they will only be used for their specific story moments, as opposed to permanently being present like the ruins of Rackham's home and Gringotts. Places like Diagon Alley, Platform 9 3/4, Feldcroft, St. Mungo's, and possibly more will be used for specific story sequences. Diagon Alley works perfectly as part of the opening, but there's no real point in having the possibility of returning during the school year. It works to introduce the Wizarding World early on, regardless of the character's background. Keeping areas like these off the permanent map helps to focus the experience on Hogwarts as well. The wider world only exists as is necessary for the story and not constantly present, serving as a possible distraction. Cutting down the size of the map to only Hogwarts, the surrounding area, Hogsmeade, and the Forbidden Forest means removing a large amount of the map. For our rewrite, we want to remove parts that do not meaningfully support the fantasy of being a Hogwarts student. The vast majority of the highlands are cut since the player is not meant to be a wandering adventure. This also means removing lots of the repetitive, open world content. Enemy camps, caves, balloon clusters, and other things like these are removed. Because of these being placed everywhere, they feel more like checklists to pad out the runtime rather than being purposeful. An example of something that is being reworked are the Merlin trials. Currently, they feel rather lame in the base game, especially being tied to someone as iconic as Merlin. For our rewrite, the goal is to have only one of each type that is expanded to feel more fulfilling and tie them into Isidora's character quest, learning more about her and Merlin's experiments with ancient magic. The main idea is that content shouldn't exist to fill space. If something doesn't directly support the school year, characters, main story, or the player's role as a student, then it probably doesn't have a place on our map. I don't want to make Hogwarts Legacy smaller just for the sake of making it smaller, but because I want it to feel focused, more purposeful, and more closely aligned with the fantasy of being a student. Removing much of the bloated side content and instead focusing on what matters most should enhance the experience of what makes Hogwarts Legacy great as it currently is. How large the map is doesn't matter in comparison to how deep the world is in moment to moment gameplay. I think the game is only stronger if the map contributes to the feeling of schooling at Hogwarts, the player's routine, and if Hogwarts becomes the anchor for the rest of the game.